This is On Assignment.
VOA News. VOA News.
Hi, I'm Imran Siddiqui here with Alex Villarreal, and we are on assignment at the Pentagon, headquarters of the U.S. Department of Defense and one of the largest office buildings in the world. In this episode, we go behind the scenes with VOA's Pentagon correspondent.
We'll hear all about his latest reporting adventure on a U.S. aircraft carrier sailing through tense waters near Iran.
You learn how Voice of America's correspondent in Cairo is covering the changes sweeping the Arab world.
And finally, a look at a side of Afghanistan you don't often see. So join us as we go on assignment.
Let's go.
I'm here in the Pentagon briefing room with VOA Pentagon correspondent Luis Ramirez. Hi, Luis.
Hi, Alex.
Thanks for joining us. We are talking to Luis just after he's returned from a trip on the U.S. aircraft carrier, the USS Abraham Lincoln, that traveled through the Strait of Hormuz. What made this trip different?
Well, certainly the circumstances were different. It was a period of great tension when Iran had warned U.S. ships not to transit the Strait of Hormuz. There we were on a huge U.S. aircraft carrier, 11 news organizations, going right through the Strait of Hormuz within view of Iranian boats.
And what was the mood like on the carrier as you traveled through?
The best way to describe it is that it was totally professional. You knew they were on alert. You knew the situation was tense, but no one talked about being tense, being on alert, or being nervous. They talked about doing their exercises and being ready for anything that would come their way.
Another interesting thing that happened on your trip, you had sort of some issues with the Bahraini authorities. Can you talk about that experience?
Well, I'll tell you, the timing of the trip was really interesting because we were there the week of the anniversary of an uprising that happened a year ago. It was one of the incidents of the Arab Spring, the so-called Arab Spring. The Bahrain government was very nervous about having international journalists in the country at the time. So things were very tense. Our whole team of reporters, 11 news organizations, held at the airport for 7 hours. And then were given a 24-hour visa to get out right away. What's
a typical day like for you here at the Pentagon?
Well, no typical day in this very great building. Come in and just don't know what you're going to find. But one of the best parts of this job is that I do get to leave the building a lot. And that means hopping on a plane and going with the Secretary of Defense to maybe 6 nations in 4 days. December, being the end of the U.S. operations in Iraq, was a very busy month for Pentagon correspondents. Started the month at Fort Hood, had a welcoming ceremony for U.S. troops coming home from Iraq. Came back, caught a plane to Kuwait, where I went on an assignment along the Kuwait-Iraq border to see the drawdown, to see just the massive amounts of equipment, troops, crossing the border from Iraq into Kuwait as the drawdown was coming to its final days.
Luis Ramirez, VOA's Pentagon correspondent, you are on assignment. Imran, these aircraft carriers like the one that Luis went on, obviously huge, basically floating cities, but I would imagine that it would be a little difficult to get used to actually living on one.
In fact, I had a chance to talk to Geeta and Arash of PNN, Persian News Network, and that's what they talked about. They were on the USS Abraham Lincoln with Luis, and they get talking about the noise. You know, just imagine every day you hear these planes taking off. So it was just amazing. Let's go check out their package and see how it goes.
Let's check it out.
Now we're sitting here with Geeta and Arash. They just got back from USS Abraham Lincoln. Tell me something, Arash. How does it feel to be next to that aircraft or that jet when it's taken off?
I'm not even sure I can explain. When you have hot wind blowing at you, and I mean hot, and everything's fumes, but it was hot and windy. I mean, we're almost getting blown over regularly.
I love the jet sound, though.
Oh, so cool, yeah. But our ears are covered, so, but even then, I mean, it's so loud.
Were you scared?
Not at all.
Really?
No, I loved it. I mean, I couldn't wait to get there and to see the jets take off. I don't know, maybe in my next life I'll be a pilot.
Takeoff from 0 to 150 miles per hour in a second. Awesome. But the landing on a moving carrier is pretty awesome too. But jets aren't the only birds on a carrier, and we learned the hard way that a chopper's blades can chop a stand-up to pieces.
Captain, it's very important because, why is it important? I don't know.
Now, it's hard to imagine that so many jets can fit under the roof of this hangar, but seeing is believing. 4 elevators, 2 on each side of the flight deck, move jets from deck to hangar.
Clear the landing area for Hotel 1 cell lines. We're covering aircraft.
Gita thought this was the plane's weapon system. It's not, it's the gas tank. But these are the nails the flying hammers carry on board.
It's a 2,000-pounder.
The ship, this floating metal monster, refuels once every 25 years, all thanks to nuclear power. It's got 18 decks and the crew spends half of their time avoiding traffic jams. Each deployment sends about 4,500 sailors around the world for 6 or 7 months. And even still, one never tires of looking at the waters of the Persian Gulf.
Getting around, it's amazing. It's a maze in
It's a
itself.
maze.
Yeah, really.
It's definitely a maze.
Right. I asked one of the PAO officers how long it took her to learn her way around, and she said about 3 months. And we definitely, all of us, needed an escort to show us around because there was no way we could have found our way. And every corridor was like just the next one, you know. So.
One thing that I noticed in the story was that you found people from a pretty diverse background. How was that experience? You guys weren't the only so-called minorities on board. You saw people from other parts of the world as well?
Oh man, yeah, and a lot of people on the ship commented about this too, that it's just like taking a slice of an American city. We found a small group of Muslims even that were having a hard time organizing, but again, it's just all over the ship. It's just a little slice of American life.
Yeah.
So every 25 years the ship is refueled. Tell us a little bit about that.
The nuclear-powered aircraft carriers are obviously fueled at the very beginning when they want to throw them in the water, when they're commissioned. That fueling lasts for 25 years. And in fact, the Abraham Lincoln was or is actually on its way back to the U.S., that is gradually, for the refuelment, for the second and last refuelment.
I just want to shift the gears a little bit. Let's talk about the women on board USS Abraham Lincoln. 770 women.
Right.
But you, as a woman journalist, how did you feel hanging out with all these women on board the ship in a field that's predominantly, was tagged as a male-dominated
Exactly.
sector?
I was very proud. I felt really good seeing women doing what they were doing.
And managing 15, 20 people on the bridge at a time. And it's my job to manage all of them for the captain so that he doesn't have to, he can focus on the big picture.
Lieutenant Donnelly, Chief Warrant Officer Oscar.
So it was really empowering. It was really good seeing women in such roles. And even the enlisted people that we saw and we talked about and talked to, they too, some of them had hopes of staying in the Navy and rising in the ranks. So it was very good seeing that women are gaining more grounds in a male-dominated area.
And lastly, considering all the nausea and the bad food, would you guys be ever willing to go back?
Oh man, in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat, of course. It's an honor and it is good fortune to be able to do an adventure. I mean, where else can you get an international adventure?
Same for me, same for me. I had never been so excited in my entire life. Just the thought of going on this ship kept me up for nights, something that had never happened to me in years and years. Yes, definitely.
Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking the time out. And of course, you can catch Gita and Arash on PNN, which is Persian News Network, and at voanews.com. You are on assignment.
We just saw how VOA is tracking tensions with Iran, but Iran isn't the only conflict area that we've been following in the Middle East. The past year's revolutions have unleashed a domino effect of changes and challenges, and VOA has been there at every stage. We're looking right now at images from Yemen's recent presidential election. These pictures were taken for us by VOA's Elizabeth Arendt. Elizabeth joins me now via Skype from Cairo, where she's based. Hi, Elizabeth. It's so great to see you. You've been covering these Arab Spring protests really since they began. Being in Yemen for this election, which comes after the toppling of a ruler of more than 30 years, what was that moment like for you?
Well, it was very interesting. It was quite different than a lot of the other ones because what you had was actually a peaceful transfer of power, which obviously we didn't see in Libya, we didn't see in Egypt, and certainly we're not seeing in Syria. So it was An imperfect election. It was the vice president, the man who was ousted, President Ali Abdullah Saleh. But the very fact that they were able to move forward, I think, made a lot of people really happy. It seemed to be a fairly positive step and a peaceful step, and that's what people really appreciated.
And what was the mood like, the public in the streets as they went to the polls?
Well, they were really crowded. Everybody, I mean, from old ladies to young people, they were just pushing into the polling stations, and that in itself was really, really interesting and I think quite cathartic for a lot of people who haven't had a choice about, to have a new president, and as you noted, over 30 years. So that was terrific. That said, the protest camps that have been in the middle of Sana'a for more than a year now, people are staying there, and they're actually really kind of solidifying their positions. These tents are now turning into brick houses, and they say they're going to stay until they get real change.
Much of what the world has seen of the Arab uprisings this past year has come from the people living through them. These citizen journalists helped to spread the word and images of the protests. In Yemen, from an apartment near Sanaa's Change Square, Nadia Abdullah watched the demonstrations unfold.
My father gave me a camera and told me, "This is in case there's any attack on youth. You film it, and then we can send it to the media channels."
Even documenting the unrest from home was a big step, she says, for her conservative father.
I didn't imagine that my father, brother, or the family would accept that I go out and do an interview on camera. This was almost impossible to do because of the norms and traditions.
The revolution, she says, changed everything.
I followed news when it happened and shot what is happening in the squares of conferences, forums, demonstrations, inside or outside.
She documented the crackdown by government troops. She captured heartbreaking grief, but also quieter moments, both in video and still photos.
I took this photo on the 27th of Ramadan during prayers.
Ultimately, the protesters and the citizen journalists who told their story helped to topple the nation's longtime ruler. For Nadia, now pursuing a journalism career, they brought down barriers for Yemeni women as well.
This group of citizen journalists who really have played such a huge role in getting the word out about these protests, what led you to do that story?
Well, I think it was the woman herself, Nadia Abdullah. She was very typical in many ways, educated young Yemeni woman, but because it is such a strict society in many ways, as she says in the piece, that she wasn't really allowed to go out, and she would never imagine that her father or brothers would let her go down and mingle. The fact that she did this, and she's quite, soft-spoken. There's nothing outwardly showing how daring she'd be. And then if you look at her video and you see her in the morgue with these very, very heartbreaking scenes or running, following the bullets are going, and you think, how did this young woman do it? And she just did it. And I think it was the need to tell the story that people would benefit from being able to show what was going on when a lot of foreign journalists, the government was very good about keeping foreign journalists out, that they took it upon themselves to document what was going on.
Well, we know that you will be right there bringing us all the news as it happens, as the transition continues. We thank you so much, Elizabeth, for your courage in going out to these places and bringing us these stories. Again, this is VOA's Elizabeth Arrett, our correspondent in Cairo, and you are on assignment.
The Voice of America began broadcasting on February 1st, 1942. Now in its 70th year, VOA is bringing America's story to the world in new and different ways. Let's take a look.
Transmitters on. It started on the radio.
This is a voice speaking from America.
VOA is now a multimedia machine. It's a new world, moving fast, and Voice of America is keeping pace. iPhones are cameras, iPads are teleprompters. Skype me an interview, text me your story, tweet a line, Facebook an idea, HDTV anyone? Thank you, Final Cut Pro. Studio 52, the mission to share. The name, Podolise. It's Russian. The audience drives the show, plugging citizen journalists and viewers directly into the broadcast.
It used to be just conversations in the kitchen. Now it's conversations online.
In January, VOA unveiled a state-of-the-art TV studio with a fully automated digital master control, a 16-foot video wall, a full interview set, and a control room background.
The light patterns that you see on the back wall are an infinite palette of pastel-type colors that we can put into them. So we can change the scene with all the different changes in VOA programming.
The Urdu service is retooling its TV offerings to reach more young people. One of their upcoming shows, Zoom In, a daily lifestyle show covering Americana, entertainment, and social issues, but with a lighter touch. Another new program, Cafe DC, where VOA talks with the movers and shakers in the nation's capital, angling for the human and personal side of these important people.
I think it's important for parents to try and encourage their children to, pursue their own talents and their own potential.
On January 9th, VOA launched its first broadcast of Diwa programming to Pakistan on satellite TV. From our studios in Washington, Impartial News is simulcast on radio. It can also be received in Afghanistan.
For me, it's really a great experience because I've never been in front of camera, so it's first time for me.
Now to Burma, a new half-hour television show with a fast-paced daily summary of the latest news, a program with U.S. culture, politics, and updates from the world of science and technology.
She was so mad, she practically had a
Always looking for innovative ways to reach and inform, the English division created customized interactive English lessons. The classroom is already a hit with our fans.
Obviously, there was not a cow in the room.
It's a lot of fun, and if you head to our Mandarin service, you'll enjoy learning English with a smile in a highly entertaining, stylish, and witty webcast called OMG Mayu.
You don't want to hurt your GPA. 你不要伤害你的平均绩点.
The Mandarin service has other innovative new shows like Congress on China and Democracy in America. Netizen shows the Chinese audience how U.S. internet users look at current issues and their comments via social media. It delves into the world of online opinion with a healthy dose of humor and satire. VOA is all about being global.
Today is actually the first day that we have launched this new pilot project where we are taking material from our sister entities at RFE and RFA and publishing that material back on our website.
Hi, this is Imran Siddiqui from VOA's Urdu TV.
The English division's new 30-minute weekly TV magazine show, On Assignment, gives you the story behind the stories. With its edgy style, it gets personal with reporters and correspondents around the world, looking at the challenges, the fears, emotions, and dangers they sometimes face in the chase to get the news.
And then they said, no, you are not allowed.
There are big changes underway at VOA. Check out the newsroom.
We've done several joint projects with our colleagues from Urdu and from PNN.
VOA is everywhere.
En serio, yo creo que
in 43 languages with news and information to 141 million people a week. From the uprising in Syria to the U.S. Republican primaries, VOA is there.
We've got a great conservative track record. A great victory in Arizona tonight.
The war in Afghanistan and what the U.S. plans ahead. Andre Dinestra getting the inside scoop with a one-on-one with President Obama.
President Karzai, I think, has the same strategic interests that we have.
The innovation continues on VOA Persian with Perspectives, a bilingual interview show hosted by one of VOA's most recognizable personalities.
I'm Setare Darakhshish. He told me about a project his company has been working on.
And finally, TV viewers in Iran have been delighted by VOA's satirical take on Iranian politics called Parazit. Parazit means static in English. But VOA is anything but static. We're changing and moving forward to another 70 years.
Part of VOA's mission is giving audiences overseas a taste of American life. But Imran, talking to people in other countries, you get a sense that there's this perception of the U.S. that's like what you see in the movies, that it's all high-tech, fast-paced, but you actually talked to a reporter who proved that's really not always the case.
That's right, because people outside the U.S. might say that everything about the U.S. is Hollywood, which might not be the case. I had a chance to talk to Nadeem Yaqub of Urdu television, who visited one American community that's like going back in time. Let's check out his story. I'm standing here with Nadeem Yaqub from Urdu TV. Nadeem just got back from a fantastic trip with the Amish community. Nadeem, why did you choose the Amish for this particular story?
Where you have this community, they live like really very simple life. They don't have, for example, televisions at home. They don't use cars. If we were to compare or find a community in Pakistan which is very similar to these people here, it would be Kalash people living in the valleys up in the north. While the Kalash, they have a very primitive belief system that they follow and their traditions. The Amish, they choose this life. When they are adults, they become adults around 16 years old. The boys of the girls, they decide, they choose voluntarily whether they want to have this lifestyle or not.
Well, for me, the interesting aspect was when I saw you sitting in their buggies, in their cart.
My grandparents bought this farm in 1928 down here, but the buildings were built in 1860. Our house and barn 150 years old down here.
They came here because of religious persecution. They escaped from Europe, came and settled in several states of the United States at that time. And most of them were farmers.
I didn't get the feeling that as if, oh, look at these guys, they're so far behind from the rest of the world. The feeling that I got was that, look at that unique angle in the 21st century, that there are people like that who are living in the century and that still are happy and surviving and going on with their lives.
They have a very strong family system. It's not something which is imposed on them. They choose this lifestyle. Most of these Amish people who live in this countryside, they work. If they are not landowners, they have farm. Even if they don't have farmhouses, they still work like builders and constructors. They have furniture making shops and factories. So they are pretty good at what they do, and they are happy about it.
Nadeem Yaqub from Urdu TV just got back from the Amish community in Pennsylvania, and you can catch more of this on voanews.com. You are on assignment.
The Voice of America tells America's story through radio, television, and the internet, delivering news and communicating American values in over 45 languages, using state-of-the-art satellite technology and other emerging forms of digital distribution. VOA was founded to provide news to an international audience being manipulated by propaganda during World War II. Throughout the Cold War, VOA reached across the Iron Curtain with information to closed societies. Moving from shortwave to FM, television, and the internet, the multimedia broadcasts of VOA promote freedom and democracy.
If you die, we are dying. Don't worry.
Whether offering the most comprehensive, fair-minded news or promoting respect for human rights, in countering extremism and fostering discussion, U.S. international broadcasting plays a strategic role in utilizing the most advanced technology tools to inform and influence public opinion.
Next up, it's Afghanistan like you've never seen it before. VOA's Wahidullah Faizi Sapi shows us a sport that's giving the war-torn nation a whole new zest for life.
Afghan athlete Bakhtash Akbarzada is preparing for the 2012 Paralympic International Games. In the past 5 years, as a young disabled athlete, Bakhtash has participated in national bodybuilding competitions. He came in first place twice and achieved a second place in another contest. Bakhtash has high hopes that he will be successful in the Paralympic Games.
Preparation have begun, and we were also told by the Olympic Committee to start preparing for the London Games. We have been practicing and getting ready for the Games.
An athlete at heart, Bakhtash has always loved sports. He is coach at an athletic club in Kabul and trains about 30 men in bodybuilding. With these opportunities, he does not feel as if he is disabled.
I don't think of myself as a disabled athlete. I can represent and serve my country.
Bakhtash has completed 14 years of education. He was injured when he was only 7 during the war, and his name was added to Afghanistan's disabled list. Bakhtash says he wishes for the war in Afghanistan to come to an end and peace reach every family.
I was only 7 years old when I was injured in the war. Basically was disabled.
Kazim Wafa is trainer that works with Bakhtash.
He is a very successful champion and he has got a great deal of patience. He has been working out in the sports club for the past 6 years. From what I know, even though he is disabled, Bakhtash has a bright future ahead of him. He is a very hard-working athlete.
Bakhtash wishes the government would give them more attention and more money for equipment and training. After all, he says these athletes are the ones who represent Afghanistan and raise their Afghan flag internationally.
I'm one of those athletes who is not financially stable. We should be given more attention by the Olympic Federation, and they should keep our financial difficulties in mind.
Currently, some 500 athletes in the country are part of the Paralympic Federation and are participating in various different sports such as swimming, judo, weightlifting, cycling, wheelchair racing, and bodybuilding.
And if you'd like to find out more about any of the stories we showed you or the reporters we featured, check us out on Facebook and Twitter at VOA On Assignment.
Be sure to join us next time as we go inside Japan 1 year after the Fukushima nuclear disaster.
On behalf of this team, on behalf of Alex and myself, from the VOA newsroom in Washington, this is On Assignment.